Rural route evaluations under RRECS. In this section, we will look at all the standards and processes that go into calculating rural route evaluations under RRECS. The explanations follow, as closely as possible, the order in which standards are listed on the current Form 4241M, of which we are all familiar. When we refer to a particular standard, we will use the standard number, as in S134 for a stop sign, from the ECS Form 4241 to RRECS comparison chart. Drive time. RRECS employs a drive speed matrix and MDD, and mapping data to divide your route into a series of intervals of varying lengths, then applies a determined driving speed to each interval based on the length of the interval. Each interval is the distance between two successive vehicle stops. Here is the drive speed matrix that is utilized by RRECS. Drive speed matrix. The RRECS software totals all the individual interval times as calculated in the above example, and arrives at a daily drive time that is multiplied by 6 to arrive at a weekly drive time. Here are some examples that illustrate the difference between the current ECS and RRECS. Under ECS, a mile is a mile is a mile. We simply take the route miles and multiply by 12 minutes each to get the total weekly allowance for driving time. So, 1 mile of driving equals 12 minutes per week in evaluation, regardless of how you drive that mile. Under RRECS, the calculation and result are much different. Here are some examples of different route miles under RRECS. A mile in which the rural carrier is in a neighborhood and stops every 100 feet or so to service a box. In this example, the mile is divided in approximate 53 intervals of 100 feet. Looking at the DSM above, we multiply each 100-foot interval by 0.00128 minutes/foot, and get 0.128 minutes per interval times 53 intervals equals 6.78 minutes per day or 40.7 minutes per week driving time for this mile of the route. A mile in which the carrier stops for boxes that are more spread out and 1/10 of a mile apart. In this example, the mile is only divided into 10 intervals of 528 feet. From DSM, we multiply each 5 to 8 foot interval by 0.00067 minutes/ft, and get 0.354 minutes per interval times 10 intervals equals 3.54 minutes per day or 21.23 minutes per week driving time. A mile of deadhead in which the carrier makes no stops for boxes or traffic control points. In this example, the mile is one interval of 5,280 feet. From DSM, we multiply 5,280 feet times 0.00029 minutes/feet, and get 1.53 minutes per day or 9.19 minutes per week driving time. Obviously, the calculation of drive time is complicated, but the system has automated the process to quickly determine the weekly drive time to be included in our evaluations. Traffic control points. RRECS simply multiplies the weekly number and type of traffic control points, TCPs, by the standard developed for each time. For instance, if you have 3 stop signs on your route, RRECS would credit your weekly evaluation with 18 times 0.0499 minutes, S134, or 54 seconds per week. Creep time, S143. This standard is applied to those instances in which the distance between 2 mailboxes is less than 5 feet. The mapping program cannot accurately discern distances this small, so RRECS applies a standard of 0.0208 minutes for each of the spaces between boxes grouped close together. In a common example of 10 boxes lined up on one long post, the route valuation would be credited with 9 spaces times 0.0208 minutes/space times 6 days or 1.12 minutes per week in creep time for this set of boxes. Box time. The box time calculation under RRECS is more complicated than the current ECS. First, we determine whether the route is classified as 1 bundle, 2 bundle, or 3 bundle. This is very simple. If the route receives no DPS letters or flats, it is considered 1 bundle. If the route receives DPS letters only, it is considered 2 bundle. If the route receives both DPS letters and DPS flats, FSS, it is considered 3 bundle. For each type of mailbox or delivery, there are 3 different standards depending on which category the route falls under. For example, most deliveries on rural routes are curb deliveries and most rural routes fall in the 2 bundle category as the route receives DPS letters. The standard established by the engineering panel for these types of deliveries includes the following actions. The carrier will reach and grasp the next bundle of mail from the case tray, removing the rubber band and return the mail to the tray. This method recognizes that carriers will often use a U-shape or box holder mail item to divide mail by address, but carriers are still required to flip through and verify the address on each piece of mail upon arrival at the delivery address. The carrier will then read and verify the address of each piece of mail until they have selected all the mail for the current address. The carrier will transfer the selected mail to their right hand for delivery. The carrier will reach to the DPSL tray, select any mail for the current delivery address, and transfer that mail to the right hand with the mail gathered in steps 1-2. The carrier will reach to the mailbox, lowering the mail flag if it is up, then open the mailbox. The carrier will place the mail selected for delivery in the mailbox, remove any outgoing mail, and then close the mailbox. The carrier will place the outgoing mail in the appropriate location and continue the route. The standard S101 for this type of box is 0.2027 minutes/day or 1.2162 minutes/week. This is considerably lower than our current standard of 2.0 minutes per week on non-L routes and 1.82 minutes per week on L routes. However, the box allowance under RRECS also includes additional time for verifying letter and flat addresses on the mail pieces we are delivering, standards S144 and S145. Standards S100, 0.1483 minutes/day or 0.8898 minutes/week, or S102, 0.2572 minutes/day or 1.5432 minutes per week, would be applied if the route qualified as 1 bundle or 3 bundle as appropriate. Standards S144 and S145 are applied to all letter and flat-sized mail except for box holders. So, in addition to the box times above, the route would be credited with additional verification time of 0.0116 minutes per piece, 86 pieces per minute, for the weekly average of letters received over the previous 52 weeks and 0.0142 minutes per piece, 70 pieces per minute, for the weekly average of flats received over the previous 52 weeks. Just as an example of how the calculation works, in the September 2020 special mail count of approximately 1,700 routes, the average weekly letters received was 6,900 and the average weekly flats received was 1,864. So, under RRCES, these routes would have 106 minutes per week calculated into the evaluation for verifying addresses on mail pieces at the box. The total average number of boxes served on these routes during the same mail count was 514. On average, the standards for verifying mail pieces would have added 0.2062 minutes per week for each box delivered. This figure would be different for every route as it's based on the actual volume of letters and flats received per week. Much like the standard for curb boxes, the panel developed different standards for the other types of regular deliveries rural carriers make. Sidewalk boxes are those where the carrier dismounts to step across a sidewalk to deliver the box. In addition to standards S104, S105, and S106 as appropriate, standard S103, dismount and prep SDWK, is applied to each sidewalk box, adding an additional 0.6709 minutes per day or 4.0254 minutes per week. Any dismount walking distance is also included with each sidewalk box and credited as standard S142, walking standard, at 0.00429 minutes per foot. The carrier will have an option each day of indicating on the MDD that an additional trip was required for these types of deliveries. When indicated, standard S103A, additional trip SDWK, will be credited at 9.3 seconds for the additional trip plus the walking distance, S142, at 0.00429 minutes/foot. Other deliveries are where the carrier dismounts and walks a distance to effect delivery, usually inside a building or business. In addition to standards S108, S109, and S110 as appropriate, standard S107, dismount and prep other, is applied to each other box, adding an additional 0.8931 minutes per day per box. Any dismount walking distance is also included with each other box and credited as standard S142 at 0.00429 minutes per foot. The carrier will have an option each day of indicating on the MDD that an additional trip was required for these types of deliveries. When indicated, standard S107A, additional trip other, will be credited at 12.5 seconds for the additional trip plus the walking distance, S142, at 0.00429 minutes/foot. The panel also developed standards for centralized boxes served by rural carriers. CBU deliveries are those where the carrier dismounts to deliver to one or more cluster box units containing multiple individual boxes. In addition to applying standards S113, S114, or S115 as appropriate, for each individual box, the route is credited with 0.3311 minutes per day, 1.9866 minutes per week, for each CBU unit for which the carrier must unlock, open, close and relock the door, S112. Additionally, standard S111, dismount and prep CBU, is applied to each CBU dismount stop, adding an additional 0.8816 minutes per day or 5.3 minutes per week per dismount. Dismount walking distance is also included with each CBU dismount and credited as standard S142 at 0.00429 minutes per foot. The carrier will have an option each day of indicating on the MDD that an additional trip was required for CBU deliveries. When indicated, standard S111A, additional trip CBU, will be credited at 9.3 seconds for the additional trip plus the walking distance, S142, at 0.00429 minutes/foot. Central deliveries are those where the carrier dismounts to deliver to one or more centralized units, such as apartment clusters or other centralized deliveries, containing multiple individual boxes. In addition to applying standards S119, S120, or S121 as appropriate, for each individual box, the route is credited with 0.3803 minutes per day, 2.2818 minutes per week, for each central unit which the carrier must unlock, open, close and relock the door, S118. Additionally, standard S117, dismount and prep cent, is applied to each central dismount stop, adding an additional 1.9112 minutes per day or 11.46 minutes per week per dismount. Dismount walking distance is also included with each central dismount and credited as standard S142 at 0.00429 minutes per foot. The carrier will have an option each day of indicating on the MDD that an additional trip was required for central deliveries. When indicated, standard S117A, additional trip cent, will be credited at 26.4 seconds for the additional trip plus the walking distance, S142, at 0.00429 minutes/foot. NPU deliveries are those where the carrier dismounts to deliver mail inside a non-personnel unit or unmanned post office. Typically, these locations are like a PO box section and the carrier delivers to multiple boxes in one or more units. In addition to applying standards S125, S126, or S127 as appropriate, for each individual box, the route is credited with 0.0983 minutes per day for each NPU unit the carrier must access, usually through a secure door. S124. Additionally, standard S123, dismount and prep NPU, is applied to each NPU dismount stop, adding an additional 1.9112 minutes per day or 11.46 minutes per week per dismount. Dismount walking distance is also included with each NPU dismount and credited as standard S142 at 0.00429 minutes per foot. The carrier will have an option each day of indicating on the MDD that an additional trip was required for NPU deliveries. When indicated, standard S123A, additional trip NPU, will be credited at 26.4 seconds for the additional trip plus the walking distance, S142, at 0.00429 minutes/foot. Detached village post office deliveries are those where the carrier dismounts to deliver mail inside a village post office location. Typically, these locations are like a PO box section and the carrier delivers to multiple boxes in one or more units. In addition to applying standard S131 at 0.2084 minutes per day or 1.2504 minutes per week per box for inserting the mail in the individual box, the route is credited with 0.0983 minutes per day for each village post office the carrier must access, usually through a secure door, S130, and 0.1256 minutes per day, S133 presort mail for insertion in boxes DET, per village post office unit. Additionally, standard S129, dismount and prep DET, is applied to each village post office stop, adding an additional 2.0761 minutes per day or 12.4566 minutes per week per dismount. Dismount walking distance is also included with each village post office dismount and credited as standard S142 at 0.00429 minutes per foot. The carrier will have an option each day of indicating on the MDD that an additional trip was required for DET VPO deliveries. When indicated, standard S129A, additional trip DET, will be credited at 29.74 seconds for the additional trip plus the walking distance, S142, at 0.00429 minutes/foot. Collection compartments. Regardless of whether the collection compartment is associated with a CBU, central delivery, non-personnel unit, or VPO, S116, S122, S128 or S132, the credit is the same. Each compartment adds 20 seconds per week to the evaluation. Parcel lockers. There is no standard allowance under RRECS for the parcel lockers themselves. Parcels are credited according to the location of delivery, with one of those being into a parcel locker. See parcels below. Random letters. The letters that would be counted under the current system as random, or raw, have been divided into two categories under RRECS. The number of average weekly random, raw, letters determined during a designated mail count period of 2 weeks is multiplied by 0.0647 minutes each, S004, which is the equivalent of 15.45 letters per minute. Random letters will only include those worked manually by a local clerk, and not processed on any automated equipment, and those letters brought back from the street out of DPS mail. The engineers determined that this number should be relatively small for most routes, and the effect of having only a 2-week count would be statistically insignificant. Walk sequence letters are credited with a different standard, S011, of 0.0364 minutes per piece, or 27.5 letters per minute. The weekly average number of WSS letters is determined over a 5-2-week period. Each time a rural carrier receives a WSS letter mailing, they will enter it into the MDD using a designated key sequence. Each set of WSS letters will be calculated at the total number of active boxes on the route and included in the calculation of the weekly average. For example, if a route with 600 deliveries receives a set of WSS letters once a month from a certain mailer, over the course of the 52 weeks, they would receive 12 sets on average, or 7,200 pieces for the 52 weeks. 7,200 divided by 52 gives us a weekly average of 138 pieces per week, and would add approximate 5 minutes per week to the evaluation. Sector segment letters. There is no time standard or definition in RRECS for sector segment mail. All automated letters sorted by USPS are either credited as DPS or random. To be counted as DPS letters, the route must have been certified, and the route must receive more than 400 pieces on that day. Anytime a route, even one that is certified, receives less than 400 pieces of DPS letters in a day, that day will be counted as random, not DPS. Casing DPS letters. While RRECS includes a standard, S009, of 0.0294 minutes per piece, 34 pieces per minute, the standard is only credited in two circumstances. One was discussed above: when the route receives fewer than 400 pieces of DPS letters in a day, the quantity is automatically defaulted to this casing standard. The second application of the DPS letters casing standard is when the route receives more than one run of DPS in a day. In this case, the casing standard would be applied to the smaller run of DPS with the fewest pieces. Again, this is an automatic default in the system. The only other time allowance for DPS letters is the Verify Letter Standard, S144, discussed under box time above. RRECS will eliminate the need for formal reviews of DPS for quantity, because the DPS volume is calculated every day over a 5-2-week period. Therefore, the evaluation will be based on the actual DPS percentage received in an entire year. RRECS will also eliminate the need for additional compensation for second runs of DPS, because those also will be calculated as DPS cased letters in the 5-2-week totals. Casing flats. The casing standards for flats are divided into three categories. Case random flats, S005, is applied to the 5-2-week average of flats processed on automated equipment and sorted to the carrier route, plus the average weekly number of flats processed locally by the clerks and DPS flats errors, determined during the 2-week mail count period, multiplied by 0.0862 minutes per piece, 11.6 pieces per minute. Case carrier route flats, S006, is applied to flats received in bundles from the mailer, routed to the specific carrier, and generally in delivery, or reverse delivery order. The weekly average volume is calculated over 52 weeks from data collected from mailers and the informed delivery system. The total weekly average is multiplied by 0.0741 minutes per piece, 13.5 pieces per minute. Case walk sequenced flats, S010, is applied to flats received in bundles from the mailer, routed to the specific carrier, and generally in delivery order. The weekly average volume is calculated over 52 weeks from data entered by the carrier, who will indicate on the MDD whenever a WSS flats mailing is received. When indicated, the route will be credited with a set of WSS flats equaling the total deliveries on the route. The total weekly average is multiplied by 0.0741 minutes per piece, 13.5 pieces per minute. Casing DPS flats. The casing standard for DPS flats is only applied to those routes with either no USPS vehicle assigned, or those routes assigned a left-hand drive USPS vehicle. The casing DPS flat standard is not credited to routes with a right-hand drive USPS vehicle assigned. The only credit for DPS flats for routes with a RHD USPS vehicle assigned is S145, verify flat addresses, at 0.0142 minutes per piece. For those routes receiving DPS flats without a RHD USPS vehicle assigned, the average weekly volume received from 52 weeks of data from end-of-run reports is multiplied by S016, case DPS flats, at 0.0708 minutes per piece, 14.12 pieces per minute. These routes will also receive the credit above for verifying the addresses at the mailbox, S145. Box holders. The panel established two separate standards for casing box holders. S012, case box holder flats, is 0.0646 minutes per piece, 15.48 pieces per minute. S013, case box holder letters is 0.0303 minutes per piece, 33 pieces per minute. The average weekly box holders received is determined by carrier input on the MDD. Each time a route receives a set of box holders, the carrier will indicate on the MDD that a set was received and whether it was letter or flat-sized. The 5-2-week average is determined by multiplying the average number of sets received per week times the number of deliveries on the route. Parcels. The time standards applied to parcels and the method in which parcels are identified and categorized are two of the major improvements in RRECS versus the current ECS. First, the time standards are more complete and accurate for the actual work involved in handing and delivering parcels. Second, the methods used to determine what is credited as a parcel, and which category it falls into are very simple. All arguments over size, rigidity, contents, damage etc. are eliminated. First, we will discuss what qualifies as a parcel under RRECS. Simply put, any normal mail piece with a delivery barcode is credited as a parcel. There are some parcels remaining without a barcode, but the panel made allowances for those items also. See RRECS scans below. When the carrier delivers an item with a barcode, they indicate on the MDD where that parcel was delivered, either mailbox, parcel locker, or door. The credit applied to each item depends on where it is delivered, period. If the carrier indicated the item was delivered to the mailbox or a parcel locker, the item is credited as a small-medium parcel. If the carrier indicated the item was delivered to the door, it is credited as a large parcel. The first standard applied to parcels is S018A, gather parcels first cart. This standard is applied each day based on the total number of parcels as indicated above. For the first 62 parcels per day, the route is credited with 0.1774 minutes or 10.6 seconds. If the route receives more than 62 parcels in a day, standard S018B, gather parcels additional trip, is applied for each multiple or partial multiple of 62 parcels. This standard is 0.4944 minutes or 29.6 seconds for each additional cart. For example, if the route receives 61 parcels in a day, only S018A would be applied. If the route received 63124 parcels, S018A and S018B would be applied. If the route received 125186 parcels, S018A plus 2 times S018B would apply. This time is averaged over 52 weeks. Office walking time, S002, is also applied to each trip to retrieve parcels, and will be discussed in more detail under the office walking section below. Standard S019, organize large parcels, is applied next and covers all time involved in handling, organizing, marking, and loading large parcels into the hampers or other conveyance equipment. This standard is 0.5157 minutes, 30.9 seconds, and is applied to the 5-2-week average of large parcels received. Standard S020, organize small and medium parcels, covers all time involved in handling, sorting in either casing or otherwise placing in delivery order all small and medium parcels, then placing them into the conveyance for loading. This standard is 0.2367 minutes, 14.2 seconds, and is applied to the 5-2-week average of small and medium parcels received. For small and medium parcels delivered into the mailbox, one additional standard, S036 deliver parcels to mailbox, is the only other time allowance. This standard is 0.1617 minutes, or 9.7 seconds, and is applied to the 5-2-week average of parcels delivered into the mailbox. Likewise, small and medium parcels delivered into a parcel locker have only one additional standard, S037 deliver parcels to parcel locker, applied. This standard is 0.3589 minutes, or 21.53 seconds, and is applied to the 5-2-week average of parcels delivered into parcel lockers. Large parcels delivered to the door have several additional standards applied. Driving time is determined by S0033, driving speed mail stop to DDD stop. The drive speed matrix is applied to the average distance measured in a straight line from the mail stop location to the direct door delivery, DDD, parking location. If the mail stop and DDD are the same, then this distance is 0 for that address. This time is applied to all large parcel stops averaged over 5-2 weeks. Only one drive time is credited per address, regardless of the number of parcels. Walking time is determined by S0034, walking speed DDD to door. The distance is measured in a straight line from the DDD to the door location where the building is accessed. This walking distance is credited at 0.00429 minutes per foot, 233 feet per minute, for each large parcel trip and averaged over 52 weeks. The carrier will be able to indicate an additional trips and walking time will be multiplied when more than one trip from vehicle to the door is required. The next time credit for large parcels is S047, prelim, and concluding at vehicle for trip to door. The allowance is 0.852 minutes, or 51.1 seconds per stop. This time includes: when appropriate, the carrier may lightly tap their horn to signal arrival at the customer's location. The carrier will park the vehicle in preparation for exit and retrieve the item from stored location. The carrier will retrieve their scanner, exit the vehicle, carrier will lock vehicle, if it will be out of sight, and depart for the customer location. Concluding activities upon return to the vehicle. Nothing to load, the carrier will enter the vehicle and place the scanner in its storage location and prepare to depart. Concluding activities upon return to the vehicle. Load through cab, the carrier will enter the vehicle and place the scanner in its storage location. Concluding activities upon return to the vehicle. Load through rear door, the carrier will arrive at the rear door of the vehicle and set down the mail items in a temporary location so they can unlock the rear door. The carrier will close and lock the rear door and then return to the driver's side door and enter the vehicle. The carrier will place the scanner in its storage location and prepare to depart and continue the route. Standard S048F, gather accountable mail/large parcel fixed, is also applied to each stop for delivery to the door. This allowance is 0.205 minutes, or 12.3 seconds for the first parcel retrieved from the vehicle for delivery. For each additional parcel retrieved for delivery at the same location, S048V, gather accountable mail/large parcel variable is credited at 0.0812 minutes, or 4.87 seconds per parcel. The last time credit for large parcels is S035, deliver parcel to door. The allowance is 0.1954 minutes, or 11.7 seconds per parcel. This time includes: the carrier will arrive at the delivery point with the parcel and place it at the selected location if there is one available. The carrier will knock on the customer's door or ring the doorbell. If the customer answers while the carrier is still present, he or she may hand the parcel directly to the customer. The carrier will obtain their scanner, scan the parcel, and make appropriate selections, then return the scanner to the holster and leave the delivery point. Or, if no appropriate place is available to leave the parcel, the carrier will complete Form 3849, leave it at the customer's address, retrieve the parcel, and return the parcel to the vehicle and eventually the post office. Notice, the time for the scan is built into these standards. There is no separate standard for scanning the parcel for delivery. An example of the total time allowance for delivering a parcel to the door: the distance from the mail stop to the DDD is 1,000 feet, and the distance from the DDD to the door is 100 feet. The carrier delivers one large parcel to the address. Here is how the time would add up. A. 30.9 seconds. B. Drive time 60 seconds. 1000 foot x 2x 0.00050 minutes per ft. C. Walk time 51.4 seconds. 100 foot x 2x 0.00429 minutes per ft. D. S047 51.1 seconds. E. S048F 12.3 seconds. F. S035 11.7 seconds. Total 217.4 seconds, 3.62 minutes. Times will vary because of different drive and walk distances. For some addresses, the drive distance may be 0, as indicated above, and the walking distance may be only 4050 feet each way. This would reduce the time allowance for large parcels delivered to that address. Under RRECS, all door deliveries made at all addresses will be averaged over 52 weeks, making both the time allowance and the number of parcels included in our evaluations fairer and more accurate. Miscellaneous trip to door. When the carrier is required to go to the customer's door to deliver miscellaneous items such as a bundle or tub of whole mail, they will use the MDD to indicate with the DoorMisk scan. Each of these is credited with S069, deliver miscellaneous to door, at 0.0854 minutes or 5.124 seconds. This scan also credits the route with the appropriate drive and walk time for a delivery to that address. Accountable mail, customs due and COD. The standards and credits applied to these types of mail pieces are very similar, so we have combined them for simplicity. First, standard S002 office walking speed is applied to the round-trip distance to the accountable's cage or location, see office walking distance database explanation below. Next, S025, perform fixed accountable cage activities, is credited at 0.7418 minutes or 44.5 seconds each day the carrier has any accountable or postage due mail. The other office time allowance for this category is 1.4745 minutes, 88.47 seconds per piece for preparing the piece for delivery. The time allowances on the street for this category closely resembles those of large parcels. S033, S034, S047, S048F and S048V are applied exactly as they would be with large parcels taken to the door. S033, S034, S047 and S048F are credited once for each trip to the address regardless of how many parcels and/or accountable items are delivered. S048V is applied for each piece after the first. For each piece of accountable/signature mail delivered, S038, deliver accountable mail, SIG items, is applied at 0.9615 minutes or 57.7 seconds per piece. For each customs due piece, S039, deliver customs due, is applied at 1.6618 minutes or 99.7 seconds per piece. For each COD delivered, S040 is applied at 1.6131 minutes or 96.8 seconds per piece. The quantity of these pieces delivered is derived from the scan data and averaged over 52 weeks. The last work involved in accountable mail is clearance after returning from the route. This work is included in end-of-shift duties which are recorded as actual time each day and will be discussed in detail later. Postage due. The time allowance for postage due mail includes S002 and S025 for walking to and from and performing the normal duties at the accountable cage/location. Remember, these credits are limited to 1 trip per day for all accountable or postage due mail. Along with that, the route is credited with S024, process postage due, at 0.0345 minutes or 2 seconds per piece for checking the pieces and signing the postage due log. The route is also credited with S041, collect postage due, at 0.9127 minutes or 54.76 seconds per piece for delivery of postage due mail. S041 includes the following activities. In Building AM portion, following return of postage due mail to the carrier's case. The carrier will place the postage due mail on their shelf and obtain a pen in Form 4245, orange envelope. The carrier will complete the appropriate fields on the form and attach it to the postage due mail item with a rubber band. The carrier cases the combined mail item and form into the correct compartment. On road/street portion. In the vehicle at the delivery address, the carrier will select the postage due mail item with the other mail. The carrier will place the postage due envelope/form in the mailbox. On road/street portion subsequent day. The carrier will retrieve the postage due envelope, verify that the amount enclosed is correct, and leave the mail item in the mailbox. The carrier will place the money in the divider tray or other appropriate location. The number of postage due pieces delivered is determined by carrier input on the MDD and averaged over 52 weeks. Change of address. If a carrier is required to process a change of address form, 3575 or 3575Z, that tasks should be completed at the end of the day and included in end-of-shift duties which are recorded as actual time. See end-of-shift duties below. PARS labels, PS Form 3982. PARS labels are credited with standard S029 at 0.405 minutes, or 24.3 seconds for each label processed. The weekly average will be determined over 52 weeks from electronic data. Markup. S027 process markups is applied to each bundle of mail marked up at 0.4233 minutes or 25.4 seconds per bundle. The weekly number of bundles processed is based on mail volume. Each day the total volume of mail is multiplied by 0.00147 and rounded to the next highest whole number. For example, if a route received 2,000 total pieces of mail, the system multiplies by 0.00147 and credits 3 bundles marked up on that day, 2000x. 0.00147 equals 2.94 rounded to 3. The weekly average bundles marked up is determined over 52 weeks. PS Form 3821. Form 3821 is completed at the end of the day and included in end-of-shift duties which are recorded as actual time. See end-of-shift duties below. Load vehicle. The time to load the vehicle is recorded daily by the carrier using the MDD, and the average weekly time is determined over 52 weeks. If mail has been placed on floor, the carrier will start the loading time just before beginning to move mail from floor into conveyance. If mail is loaded directly into conveyance during pull-down/strap out, the carrier will start the loading time when mail has been fully loaded at the case and conveyance is ready for trip to vehicle. This may include multiple trips. If loading is performed in multiple segments separated by other work functions, each load is recorded separately. For those carriers who do not receive withdrawal allowance, loading time will include pushing the conveyance to the appropriate location and loading DPS letters or flats or both. The carrier will end the loading time after loading is complete and conveyance returned to designated location. Service collection boxes. Standard S049, service, blue box, collection points, is credited each time the carrier services a blue USPS collection box and is averaged over 52 weeks. The time allowance is 1.7928 minutes or 107.56 seconds per box and includes the following tasks. Prep for service of collection point from rear door. The carrier will put the vehicle in park, set the emergency brake, turn off the engine, and release the seat belt. The carrier will retrieve the scanner, open and exit the driver door and close, but not lock, the door. The carrier will walk to the rear door, unlock, and open it, and retrieve an empty tub/tray to place in the collection box. The carrier will close, but not lock, the rear door. Service collection point. The carrier will walk to the collection point, there may be more than one at a location, and set the empty tub/tray down. The carrier will unlock and open the collection point door. The carrier will remove the full tub/tray of mail, set it aside, and visually inspect the interior of the collection point for loose mail items. The carrier will also check the top swing door for loose or stuck mail. The carrier will retrieve the scanner, make the appropriate entries, scan the collection box code, and return the scanner to the holster. The carrier will place the empty tub/tray into the collection box, and close and lock the collection box door. The carrier will retrieve the full tub/tray and visually inspect the mail contained. Conclude servicing collection point at the rear door. The carrier will walk back to the rear door of the vehicle and set any tubs/trays down as necessary to unlock and open the door. The carrier will load the tubs/trays into the rear cargo area, then close and lock the rear door. Prepare to depart. The carrier will walk to the right side door, open the door, sit in the seat, and return the scanner to the appropriate place. The carrier will then follow the normal start and leave routine to depart. RRECS-specific scans. Several new scans or data entries into the MDD device are added under RRECS. For time standard purposes, they are divided into one-step and two-step input categories. The current list of RRECS-specific scans includes scan name, scan description, scan instructions, clock in, record start of day actual, time, scan as soon as scanner is set up, and ready to scan. Letters box holder. Record when a set of letter box holders received. One scan for each letter size box holder mailing, separate scan for each set and scan drop-down. For each mailing. Scan name. Scan description. Scan instructions. Flats box holder. Record when a set of flat box holders received. 1 scan for each flat size box holder mailing, separate scan for each set and scan drop-down for each mailing. Letter Swiz. Record when a set of addressed letter walk sequence mailing received. 1 scan for each letter size addressed walk sequence mailing, separate scan for each set and scan drop-down for each mailing. Flatswiz. Record when a set of addressed flat walk sequence mailing received. 1 scan for each flat size addressed walk sequence mailing, separate scan for each set and scan drop-down for each mailing. Start load. Record actual time for load vehicle. If mail has been placed on floor, scan STARTLOADVEH just before beginning to move mail from floor into conveyance. If mail is loaded directly into conveyance during pull-down/strap out, scan STARTLOADVEH when mail has been fully loaded at the case and conveyance is ready for trip to vehicle. This may include multiple trips. If loading is performed in multiple segments separated by other work functions, record each load separately. And LOADVA. Record actual time for load vehicle. Scan ENDLOADVEH after loading. Is complete in conveyance, return to designated location. Depart to route. Record actual time departed for route. Scan just before turning key to start vehicle. Trip to door. Record when making multiple trips to the door or when a delivery made to the door, not an official dismount, does not involve a scan. In vehicle after completing delivery, scan and use drop-down to record number of trips in accordance with description. Scan name. Scan description. Scan instructions. Start deviation. Record actual time when deviating from route. Stop and scan just before deviating from line of travel en route for express mail deliveries. Could be walking, driving, or a combination of both. End deviation. Record actual time when deviating from route. Stop and scan when you have returned to the line of travel on your route. Do customs. Record count of customs mail pieces. Scan just after completing the transaction with the customer. Carrier POO. Record each pickup event and number of items retrieved. Enter at CPU stop and indicate total number of pieces collected. No barcode a parcel. Record each parcel that cannot be scanned. Scan at delivery and indicate delivered to door, mailbox, or parcel locker. Off dismount. Record number of trips if more than one is required. Scan when more than one trip required on any authorized dismount. Dormisk. Record number of trips for miscellaneous purposes such as held mail. Scan for trips required to the door to deliver held mail, etc. Rural reach. Record number of rural reach customer contacts. Enter at each rural reach. Customer contact event. Sell stamps. Record number of stamp sales transactions. Enter with each sale of stamps. Return to DU. Return to delivery unit. Scan just after returning to the office and turning key off to stop vehicle. Pacing. Indicates completion of end of shift activities. Scan after completing EOS activities before casing mail in the PM. Clock out. Record end of day, actual time. Scan just before logging off and placing scanner in cradle end. Leaving for the day. S065, perform simple one-step RRECS input scans, is applied to those scans that require only a single entry into the MDD. The standard is 0.0795 minutes or 4.77 seconds per scan. S066, perform prompted two-step RRECS input scans, is applied to those scans that require a choice in a drop-down menu on the MDD. The standard is 0.0928 minutes or 5.56 seconds per scan. These items are recoded daily, and a 5-2-week average used in the calculation. Express mail deviations. Under RRECS, required deviations for express mail delivery are no longer compensated when they happen. The total time required, on a weekly basis, is built into the evaluations. As per the instructions above, the carrier indicates on the MDD when the deviation begins and when it ends. The total actual time, including driving and walking time, is used to calculate the weekly average over 52 weeks. This actual average weekly time is calculated into the weekly route evaluation. End of shift duties. Like loading time, the time required for end of shift duties, EOS, is recorded daily on the MDD, and the average weekly time over 52 weeks is included in the evaluation. The time begins when the carrier enters return to DU on the MDD and ends when they enter PIM casing, indicating they are now switching to casing mail, or they enter clockout for the day. Either event signals the end of the timing for EOS. The end of shift activities recorded as actual time are: gather accepted and collected mail, empty mail trays, MDD, personal items, etc., and exit the vehicle. Dispose of ordinary mail collected/accepted en route. A. Affix stamps on unstamped mail when customer has left sufficient funds. B. Face and deposit mail in designated location. C. Case or dispose of undeliverable ordinary mail. Ref PO 603, Sector 4.21. Dispose of carrier pickup items collected en route. Dispose of special service mail collected/accepted en route, registered mail, certified mail, insured mail, special delivery mail, money orders, express mail, COD and delivery confirmation mail. See PO 603, Sector 42.2, for a complete description of activities. Clear and dispose of accountable items, registered, certified, and express mail, CODs, postage due, custom duties mail. Wait while items are cleared in complete paperwork. See PO 603, Sector 43, for a complete description of activities. Return keys and credit card. Dispose of signed forms for numbered insured mail, PO 603, Sector 44. Dispose of undelivered ordinary and insured parcels, PO 603, Sector 45. Place returned empty mail trays in designated storage locations. Move vehicle from unload location to regular parking location where applicable. Rural reach, replenish lead cards and brochures. Stamp stock, A. Replenish stamp stock in turn in cash from previous sales. B. Participate in audit of stamp stock sales. Trip report, complete afternoon entries on Form 4240, PO 603, Sector 41. Report vehicle problems. Perform required updates in AMS and RSD. Perform Saturday clearance activities, PO 603, Sector 48. Maintain case configuration. Authorize dismounts and dismount distance. These standards and allowances were discussed under boxes above. Letter and flats collected. This time is included in the box allowances above. Carrier pickup request and prepaid parcel event. The time standards for carrier pickups begin in the office with S026, process carrier pickup event forms. For carrier pickup request forms received by the carrier, the route is credited with 0.114 minutes or 6.84 seconds to handle and verify the form. The route will also be credited with driving speed time, S033, and walking speed, S034, as appropriate for the address where the pickup occurs. S045, carrier pickup and prepaid event, includes the following actions, and is credited at 1.187 minutes or 71.22 seconds for each event. Check parcel manifest. The carrier will retrieve the marker, if applicable, from their mail tray indicating an upcoming pickup. The carrier will locate and retrieve the pickup notification, if provided to carrier, from its storage location and read the information provided before returning it to the storage location. Attempt to get attention. When appropriate, the carrier may lightly tap their horn to signal arrival at the customer's location. In-cab activities. The carrier will follow the appropriate process for parking the vehicle in preparation for exit. The carrier will retrieve the scanner, included in S070, and a copy of a thank you letter from its storage location. The carrier will exit the vehicle to go to the pickup point. Manifest notification. The carrier will count the number of parcels and verify this against the pickup notification. The carrier will scan the barcode on the pickup notification and make the appropriate selections for shipment complete. Included in S070/S071. The carrier will look for customer's Form 5630 and again complete the scanner options for shipment complete. The carrier will leave the customer's Form 5630 and the thank you letter at the pickup location. In-cab activity. The carrier will return to the vehicle and either enter the cab, no parcel or small enough to stow in the cab area, or first go to the rear of the vehicle to stow a large parcels before then entering the cab. The carrier will then follow the appropriate steps to continue the route. If the carrier is required to scan the manifest, PS5630, the time standard is S070, full scan, manifest if provided. This standard is 0.1011 minutes, or 6.06 seconds per piece scanned. Carrier pickup items and prepaid parcels over 2 pounds. The carrier PO entry on the MDD is used to indicate a carrier pickup event and to indicate the total number of pieces collected. The panel mandated this method to ensure all CPU events are captured and, because the Postal Service may change the number of pieces required to be scanned at each carrier pickup, ensure the carrier is credited with the correct number of pieces and scans each day. Regardless of whether there is a manifest issued, carriers are credited with each item picked up as part of a carrier pickup event and each prepaid item over 2 pounds in the same manner. S046, carrier pickup and prepaid items, is credited at 0.1592 minutes or 9.55 seconds per piece and includes the following tasks. The carrier will visually inspect each item, weight, labeling and postage, etc. The carrier will then scan each item's barcode. S70 or S071 credited as appropriate. If applicable, the carrier will check the customs forms for proper completion and apply DDD2 customs label for any international parcel that is not properly documented. The carrier will return to the vehicle with the appropriate items and set aside any rejected items. At the vehicle, the carrier will load the items as follows. Through the cab, small items, the carrier will transfer the items to their left hand and place them into a tray or other storage location. Through the rear door, large items, the carrier will set down the items to prepare for loads, then retrieve them and place in the rear of the vehicle. In addition to S046 for each piece, the route is credited with S070, full scan, manifest if provided. This standard is 0.1011 minutes, or 6.06 seconds per piece for either the manifest as above or the first piece scanned if no manifest is utilized. S071, partial scan, is applied to any additional pieces scanned after the manifest or first piece. This credit is 0.0223 minutes, or 1.34 seconds per piece. Parcels accepted, ordinary, insured and COD. In establishing the time allowance for this category, the panel determined that the average number of pieces collected on any given route would be difficult to establish over a long period of time. The panel also determined, using actual mail count data, that the impact of this category on rural route evaluations was minimal and did not justify inclusion in a manual mail count. So, the allowance is based solely on the time standard for each piece collected, S044, accepted ORD, COD, INS parcels, at 0.1034 minutes, or 6.2 seconds per piece, multiplied by the average number of pieces per address per day from historical mail count data, which is 0.0002. This is then multiplied by the number of addresses on the route. For example, a route with 600 total boxes would be credited with 6.2 seconds times 0.0002 times 600 for a total of 0.744 seconds per day, or 4.46 seconds per week. It is assumed that these are items taken directly from the mailbox. The time standard only applies to this action. Any further action required in the office is covered under end-of-shift duties and recorded as actual time each day. If a trip to the customer's door is required to collect these items, the carrier will indicate on the MDD using the Dormisk entry, and the route will be credited with the appropriate driving and walking time for that day. Registered and certified mail accepted. In establishing the time allowance for this category, the panel determined that the average number of pieces collected on any given route would be difficult to establish over a long period of time. The panel also determined, using actual mail count data, that the impact of this category on rural route evaluations was minimal and did not justify inclusion in a manual mail count. So, the allowance is based solely on the time standard for each piece collected, S042, collect registered/certified mail, at 0.0944 minutes or 5.66 seconds per piece, multiplied by the average number of pieces per address per day from historical mail count data, which is 0.000094. This is then multiplied by the number of addresses on the route. For example, a route with 600 total boxes would be credited with 5.66 seconds times 0.000094 times 600 for a total of 0.319 seconds per day or 1.92 seconds per week. It is assumed that these items taken directly from the mailbox. The time standard only applies to this action. Any further action required in the office is covered under end of shift duties and recorded as actual time each day. If a trip to the customer's door is required to collect these items, the carrier will indicate on the MDD using the DORMISC entry, and the route will be credited with the appropriate driving and walking time for that day. Money order applications processed. In establishing the time allowance for this category, the panel determined that the average number of pieces collected on any given route would be difficult to establish over a long period of time. The panel also determined, using actual mail count data, that the impact of this category on rural route evaluations was minimal and did not justify inclusion in a manual mail count. So, the allowance is based solely on the time standard for each piece collected, S043, collect money order applications, at 2.1799 minutes, or 130.79 seconds per piece, multiplied by the average number of pieces per address per day from historical mail count data, which is 0.000009. This is then multiplied by the number of addresses on the route. For example, a route with 600 total boxes would be credited with 130.79 seconds times 0.000009 times 600 for a total of 0.706 seconds per day, or 4.23 seconds per week. The time standard of 2.1799 minutes, S043, above includes the following actions. The carrier will retrieve Form 6387 or other money order notification from the customer's mailbox during the regular delivery process. The carrier will park and exit their vehicle using the appropriate process to walk to the customer location. The carrier arrives at the customer's door or other delivery point and knocks or rings doorbell. The carrier requests payment for the money order application and the customer gives the payment, check or cash, to the carrier. The carrier verifies the correct amount before returning to the vehicle. The carrier returns to their vehicle and upon re-entry retrieves a Form 4245, orange envelope, and places the payment inside. The carrier completes and remaining information necessary on Form 4245 and 6387, then places them into the divider tray. The carrier continues their delivery route. The carrier will indicate the trip to the door, if necessary, on the MDD using the DORMISC entry, and the route will be credited with the appropriate driving and walking time for that day. Any further action required in the office is covered under end of shift duties and recorded as actual time each day. Return receipts. Since there is no distinction in RRECS between L and non-L routes, the time for processing return receipts is built into the time standard for all certified mail. Stamp stock and rural reach. Each contact with a potential rural reach customer indicated by the carrier on the MDD using the rural reach entry is credited using standard S067, contact rural reach customers at 5.2458 minutes. The carrier will indicate the trip to the door, if necessary, on the MDD using the DORMISC entry, and the route will be credited with the appropriate driving and walking time for that day. Total time spent on rural reach activities is averaged over 52 weeks. The actions included in this standard are: the carrier will park the vehicle and retrieve a rural reach customer brochure and lead card before exiting the vehicle. Carrier will lock the vehicle if it will be out of sight. The carrier will approach and greet the customer and then offer to describe additional USPS customer services. If the customer agrees, carrier will proceed with a brief overview of services and give the rural reach brochure to the customer. The carrier will offer a follow-up contact within 48 hours. If the customer agrees, the carrier will obtain the lead card and complete it with the customer providing information. The carrier will thank the customer for their time and depart the customer location. The carrier will arrive at the vehicle, re-enter, and prepare to continue their route. Each sale of stamps on the route as indicated by the carrier on the MDD using the sell stamps entry is credited using standard S068 at 0.7140 minutes or 42.84 seconds. Total time allowance for stamp sales is averaged over 52 weeks. The actions included in this standard are: the carrier will retrieve the postage request from the customer's mailbox, review the request, and verify that the amount paid is correct. Complex version, carrier will use a calculator to determine the amount due before verifying the correct payment has been received. The carrier will retrieve and unlock their secure pouch, insert the customer's money in request, indicate on the request that it is fulfilled, and remove the correct amount of postage. The carrier will retrieve a blank Form 3227R and the customer's change, if necessary, then close and lock the pouch. After returning the pouch to storage, the carrier will insert the customer's postage and change, if necessary, into the blank 3227R, so it may be used again by the customer, and place the 3227R into the customer's mailbox. Scanner retrieval, setup and return. The time standard for this task is S001, scanner setup activities, and is credited at 0.1882 minutes per day or 1.1292 minutes per week. This time includes the following actions. The carrier will have already retrieved the scanner at the beginning of their shift. While still at the scanner charging area, the carrier presses key to start scanner. The carrier will clock in by moving the arrow to RR clock in and pressing the enter key. Subsequent steps may occur at any location. The carrier will scan their badge, select the correct option, 1, on-street motorized or 2, on-street walk, and press the enter key. The carrier will verify the profile screen route and zip code, make any changes if necessary, and then press the enter key. The carrier will verify the 7-digit vehicle number, make any changes if necessary, and then press the enter key. 2 beeps will confirm successful entry. The carrier will check that the 11 options, quantity may vary, are available, and then store the scanner until it is needed again. The time required to return the scanner in the afternoon is included in end-of-shift duties and recorded as actual time each day. Strapping out. The time allowances for strapping out the mail for delivery are based on the volume of cased mail each day. Cased mail consists of the total number of pieces of carrier route flats, WSS flats, WSS letters, box holders, and second-run DPS letters determined from the electronic data and carrier input for the day, plus the average daily random letters and random flats from the mail count. Strapping out consists of the following. The carrier will obtain an empty tray and place it on the shelf in preparation for casing. The carrier will place a rubber band around their hand, typically around the middle of the palm. Then the carrier will grasp mail from the appropriate compartments, usually 2 per handful, and once they have 2 handfuls, usually 32 pieces, she will pull the rubber band up around the mail to secure it. The carrier places the mail into the tray and compresses the cased mail as needed to create more space. The carrier repeats steps 2-4 until the tray is full, then loads the tray into their cart and returns to step 1 until all mail has been pulled down and loaded into the cart. S017A, pulled down handle trays, is credited at 0.2458 minutes or 14.75 seconds for each tray of cased mail, 200 pieces per tray rounded up. It includes the handling of both empty trays in preparation to fill, and full trays to be loaded into a cart to take to the vehicle. For example, if a route received 1,000 pieces of cased mail, the daily time allowance would be 1,000 divided by 200 to equal 5 trays at 14.75 seconds per tray, totaling 73.75 seconds. S017B1, pull down handful, is credited at 0.0291 minutes or 1.746 seconds for each handful, 32 pieces per handful rounded up, and includes positioning to prepare to begin pulling down cased mail from compartments into carrier's hand and then placing each handful into a tray. S017B2, pull down compartments, is credited at 0.0326 minutes or 1.956 seconds per compartment, case separation, and includes pulling down cased mail from the case. The time credit is determined by the route's bundle system, 1, 2 or 3 bundle, and the total number of addresses. 1 bundle routes are credited 1.956 seconds per day for every address. 2 and 3 bundle routes are credited by dividing the total addresses by 2 and multiplying by 1.956 seconds due to the lower quantity of cased mail. S017C, pull down position and remove rubber bands, is credited at 0.099 minutes or 5.94 seconds per banded bundle, 32 pieces per bundle rounded up, and includes positioning a rubber band around each handful of cased mail that is pulled down in the office, and removing the rubber band prior to address verification and delivery on the street. Complete Trip Report, Form 4240. Each route is credited with S030, Complete 4240, at 0.491 minutes per day or 2.946 minutes per week for completing the Form 4240 as per the PO603. Move trays to storage. Each route is credited with S031, move trays to storage, at 0.2643 minutes per day or 1.5858 minutes per week. The standard includes the following. The carrier will gather all empty/unnecessary tubs and trays in a stack on the ledge, and then pick them up for transport to the storage location. Upon arrival at the storage location, the carrier will sort and place the tubs and trays into their appropriate location until all of them have been stored. The walking time for this task is included in the office walking distances detailed below. Locked pouch stops. The panel saw a need to divide the time allowance for locked pouch stops, service inter-unit mail, into two categories, low volume and high volume. The determining factor is the work performed servicing the inter-unit delivery. When mapping the route, the carrier will indicate each locked pouch, inter-unit delivery, stop and place it in the proper category of low or high volume. If the stop is serviced regularly with one trip into the office, it would be classified as low volume. If the stop requires a trip to retrieve a conveyance to transport mail, parcels, etc., then it classified as high volume. Standard S050, service inter-unit mail, low volume, is described below. The carrier will park the vehicle, set the brake, and remove their seatbelt. He or she will then retrieve the scanner and the mail for delivery and exit the vehicle. The carrier will unlock the postal unit door via a 4-digit code or sliding key card and enter the unit. If service location has a scan code, the carrier will scan it. At the appropriate location, the carrier will set down mail for delivery, typically in a tub/tray or envelope, and check the area for return mail and retrieve, if applicable, after a brief visual inspection. The carrier will then exit the postal unit, door closes and locks automatically, and return to their vehicle. At the vehicle, the carrier will enter the vehicle, replace the scanner in its holster, and place any collected mail in the appropriate location. The carrier will then depart to continue the route. S050 is credited at 1.4787 minutes per day, per stop, averaged over 52 weeks. S051, service inter-unit mail, high volume, is credited at 5.7659 minutes per day per stop, averaged over 52 weeks. The tasks involved in this standard are listed below. The carrier will park the vehicle, set the brake, and remove their seatbelt. He or she will then retrieve the scanner, the mail for delivery, a carry aid, tub/tray, and exit the vehicle. The carrier will unlock the postal unit door via a 4-digit code or sliding key card and enter the unit. If service location has a scan code, the carrier will scan it. At the appropriate location, the carrier will set down mail for delivery, typically in a tub/tray or envelope, and check the area for return mail and retrieve, if applicable, after a brief visual inspection. The carrier will then locate a carry aid and place the returning mail on the carry aid. The carrier will then exit the postal unit, door closes and locks automatically, and go to the rear of the vehicle. The carrier will open the rear door and load the returning trays and mail into the vehicle. If there is additional inbound mail for the current postal unit, he or she will gather that in the carry aid before closing the rear door and returning to the postal unit. The carrier will re-enter the postal unit and place the mail in the appropriate location and return the carry aid to the location they retrieved it from. The carrier will then exit the postal unit, door closes and locks automatically, and return to the vehicle. At the vehicle, the carrier will enter the vehicle, replace the scanner in its holster, and place any collected mail in the appropriate location. The carrier will then depart to continue the route. Withdraw mail. For those offices where the carriers receive the withdrawal allowance, several standards were developed to cover the duties involved. The walking time required to complete these duties is credited under office walk time below. First, S003, gather random mail, is credited at 1.0517 minutes per day or 6.3102 minutes per week. This standard includes: the carrier will arrive at the random flats location, release their cart, and check their compartment for any mail. The carrier will grasp the mail, quickly check the top piece to verify it is theirs, and then load the mail into a tub or tray located in the cart. This will continue until all mail is loaded. Finally, the carrier will grasp their cart in preparation for transport to the next location. The carrier will arrive at the random letters location, release the cart, and check their compartment for any mail. The carrier will grasp the mail, quickly check the top piece to verify it is theirs, and then load the letters into a tub or tray located in their cart. This will continue until all mail is loaded. Finally, the carrier will grasp their cart in preparation for transport to the next location. The carrier will arrive at the carrier route flats location, release there, and check for any mail, typically in a tub. The carrier will quickly check the top pieces to verify it is theirs, grasp the tub, and then load the tub into their cart. The carrier will repeat this for any remaining tubs. Finally, the carrier will grasp the cart in preparation for transport to the next location. The carrier will arrive at the box holder's location, release their cart, and check for any box holders for their route. Some offices have a location for each carrier, and some have a general location that the carrier must search. The carrier will grasp each bundle, verify the route, and then load it into their cart. The carrier will repeat this for any remaining bundles. Finally, the carrier will grasp the cart in preparation for transport to the next location. The carrier will arrive at the walk sequence saturation location, release their cart, and check for any bundles for their route. The carrier will grasp each bundle, verify the route, and then load it into their cart. The carrier will repeat this for any remaining bundles. Finally, the carrier will grasp the cart in preparation for transport to the next location. The clerk will arrive at the carrier's case with the hot mail cart. The carrier will receive their hot mail from the clerk and verify the addresses. The carrier, if applicable, will also give any hot mail, missorted first-class mail at his or case, to the clerk. The carrier will arrive at the hot mail last call location and check their compartment for any hot mail. The carrier will grasp the mail, verify each piece belongs to them, load it into their cart, and then place their last call card in the empty compartment. Finally, the carrier will grasp the cart in preparation for transport to the next location. S007, Gather DPS letters, is applied to those routes with withdrawal allowance receiving DPS letters. This standard is 0.25 minutes or 15 seconds per tray, 425 pieces per tray rounded up. This standard is averaged over 52 weeks. This standard includes: the carrier will load their located DPS letter trays onto their cart. During loading, the carrier may sort the trays into casing order. The carrier will continue step 1 until all assigned DPS trays have been acquired, determined during the random check of each tray. Carrier should be able to identify when they have the entire route accounted for. The carrier will remove the route labels from the end of each DPS tray and discard. This may be done at the DPS source or at the carrier's case. The carrier will replace any trays removed to access their own DPS and take care to replace them from the same area. Finally, the carrier will grasp their cart in preparation for transport to the next location. The carrier will repeat steps 1-4 at the overflow DPS location as necessary. S008, Locate and Access DPS letter trays, is applied to those routes with withdrawal allowance receiving DPS letters. This standard is 0.7689 minutes per day, or 4.6134 minutes per week. This standard includes: the carrier will arrive at the DPS mail location and release their cart to begin searching. The initial search will include walking between the DPS carts while scanning the paper inventory of trays posted on the cart until the carrier finds the DPS cart with their route listed. Once they find the correct DPS cart, the carrier will look for trays with their route label, possibly moving trays for visibility. Carrier should be careful not to rearrange trays too much or allow trays to spill. As the carrier finds trays labeled for their route, they should check some of the mail on the tray to verify it is labeled correctly, i.e., it does belong to the carrier and is sorted in order. The carrier will repeat steps 1-3 above at the overflow DPS location as necessary. S014, Gather DPS flats, is applied to those routes with withdrawal allowance receiving DPS flats. This standard is 0.205 minutes, or 12.3 seconds per tray, 115 pieces per tray rounded up. This standard is averaged over 52 weeks. This standard includes: the carrier will load the trays on their cart. During loading, the carrier may sort the trays into casing order. The carrier will remove the route label from the end of each DPS flats tray and discard. This may be done at the DPS source or at the carrier's case. The carrier will repeat steps 1-2 until all trays have been found and loaded onto cart. The carrier will grasp their cart in preparation for transport to the next location. S015, Locate and Access DPS flat trays, is applied to those routes with withdrawal allowance receiving DPS flats. This standard is 0.1653 minutes per day, or 0.9918 minutes per week. This standard includes: the carrier will arrive at the FSS mail location and release their cart to begin searching their tray labels. As the carrier locates trays with the carrier's label, they should check some of the mail on the tray to verify it is labeled correctly, i.e., it does belong to the carrier, and is sorted in the correct order. The label will tell the carrier how many trays are in that route on that day. USPS vehicle. S032, Inspect Government Vehicle, is applied to all routes with a USPS vehicle assigned. This standard is 1.8716 minutes per day, or 11.2296 minutes per week. The standard does not include the walk time. That is included in the office walk time below. S032 does include. The carrier will enter the vehicle through the right side door to verify that the seat is stable, and the lap and shoulder belts operate properly. The carrier will also start the engine and check for proper operation of the vehicle. Inside the vehicle cab, the carrier will check the following: mirror alignment, wipes and washer fluid function, verify availability of blank accident report forms, vehicle gauges and horn, brake pedal and emergency brake. Headlights and flashers, leave on for step number 5 and number 9. The carrier will turn off the engine and exit the vehicle to check the right front area for the following: door closes properly, window cracks or damage, adjust mirror, if needed, body panel for damage. Right front will slash tire for proper inflation, wear, lug nuts secure, visual check. The carrier will move around to inspect the front of the vehicle for the following: headlights and flashers are working, rooftop marker lights are working, windshield for cracks or damage, hood is securely closed. Check for fluid leaks under the vehicle, front body panels for damage. The carrier will move around to inspect the left front area for the following: window cracks or damage. Adjust mirror if needed, body panel for damage. Left front will slash tire for proper inflation, wear, lug nuts secure, visual check. The carrier will step to the left side door and unlock, open, close the door, and relock, making sure it is functional. The carrier will move around to inspect the left rear area for the following: body panel for damage. Left rear will slash tire for proper inflation, wear, lug nuts secure, visual check. The carrier will continue around to inspect the rear of the vehicle for the following: tail lights and flashers are working, rooftop marker lights are working, rear door and body panels for damage. Unlock, open, close, and relock rear door, making sure it is functional. The carrier will move around to inspect the right rear area for the following: body panel for damage. Right rear will slash tire for proper inflation, wear, lug nuts secure, visual check. To conclude the inspection, the carrier will return to the right side door, turn off headlights and flashers, and close the door. The carrier should record any discrepancies and needs for repair. S052, fuel vehicle, is applied at 3.1421 minutes per refueling. The number of refueling stops per week is determined by dividing the weekly route mileage by 100. So, a route that is 45 miles long would be credited with 2.7 fuel stops per week, 45 miles times 6 days divided by 100. This standard includes the following: exit vehicle. The carrier will park the vehicle adjacent to the fuel pump, engage the emergency brake, turn off the engine, and remove the keys from the ignition. If needed, the carrier will retrieve the scanner, then exit the vehicle and close, but not lock, the door. Set up at pump. The carrier will open the fuel door and remove the gas cap, allowing cap to hang from tether. The carrier will retrieve the gas card, insert card into pump card reader, and then remove the card and return it to its storage place, pocket, card holder, etc. When pump screen responds, carrier enters their 6-digit code and hashtag sign, then waits for the screen to respond and enters it a second time. The carrier will enter yes for receipt Y/N. Fueling process. When the fuel pump is ready, the carrier will grasp the fuel nozzle, securely insert it into the filler pipe, and fuel the vehicle. Note, multiple trigger pulls and topping off the gas tank are defined as environmentally unacceptable and therefore not recognized as part of the fueling process. The carrier will lightly shake the nozzle in the filler pipe to clear residual fuel, then remove the nozzle from the vehicle. Carrier will tip the nozzle up to avoid potential spillage. The carrier will return the nozzle to the pump, retrieve and insert the gas cap into the filler pipe, and tighten the gas cap the appropriate amount. The carrier will close the fuel door over the secured gas cap. The carrier will retrieve the receipt from the pump. Return to vehicle. The carrier will return to the vehicle door, open it, enter the vehicle, sit in the driver's seat, and close the door. If the scanner was used during fueling, the carrier will return it to the appropriate location. If necessary, the carrier will retrieve a pen, make any recordings necessary, and return the pen. The carrier will buckle the seatbelt, insert key into the ignition, and start the engine. The carrier will release the parking brake, check their mirrors and surrounding area, put the vehicle in drive, and when ready depart the fuel station. Additional drive time is added to the route in the mapping process to account for the average weekly deviations from the line of travel to reach the designated fueling location. Reload allowance. The reloading standards in RRECS are best illustrated by the lookup tables below, which simplify the standard by number of trays, determined from mail volumes, and bundling system. Unloading time is now included in the EOS duties and recorded as actual time each day. The number of trays in the table below is determined by the daily volume of letters, flats, and small parcels. The number of stored trays in the chart below is determined by the total number of mail trays and subtracting 3, because the assumption is 3 trays will be loaded up front with the carrier. The total number of mail trays is determined by the total volume of random mail trays plus box holders, plus DPS letter trays plus DPS flats trays plus small parcel trays. The panel determined that parcels delivered to the mailbox or parcel locker could be further divided by small and medium. Small parcels generally being those that are cased or lined up in a tray, and medium parcels being too large to fit in the case. Through their analysis, they determined that 21.74% of these parcels should be classified as small and 78.26% as medium. The number of mail trays is calculated by adding the following. Random letters plus WSS letters plus box holder letters divided by 425 pieces per tray, plus random flats plus CR flats plus WSS flats plus box holder flats divided by 115 pieces per tray, plus DPS letters divided by 425 pieces per tray, plus DPS flats divided by 115 pieces per tray. Total number of parcels delivered to mailbox or parcel locker multiplied by 0.2174 to determine the number of small parcels, and divided by 60 to determine the number of trays. For example, a route receives the following volume on a given day: 150 random letters, 500 WSS letters, 500 box holder letters, 40 random flats, 150 CR flats, 0 WSS flats, 500 box holder flats, 2,100 DPS letters, 0 DPS flats, 79 parcels delivered to mailbox, 5 parcels delivered to parcel locker. The calculation for the table below would be 150 plus 500 divided by 425 is equal to 2.70 rounded to 3 trays of random letters. 40 plus 150 plus 0 plus 500 divided by 115 is equal to 6 trays of random flats. 2,100 divided by 425 is equal to 4.94 rounded to 5 trays of DPS letters. 0 trays for DPS flats. 84 times 0.2174 equals 18 divided by 60 is equal to 0.30 rounded to 1 tray of small parcels. Total trays equals 15, subtract 3, and use 12 total trays in the chart. This is a 2-bundle route, so the total daily time from the chart is 11.5751 minutes. This reloading time will be averaged over 52 weeks. Lookup table. Daily standard time for reloads based on trays stored and delivery system. 1 bundle, 2 bundle, 3 bundle. Number. Standard. 5.449. 14.7. 10.92. 23.5. The time for reloading medium parcels is also calculated in a similar manner. First, the total number of medium parcels is determined by adding the total parcels delivered to the mailbox to a parcel locker and applying a factor of 0.7826. That number is divided by 10 parcels per tray and rounded. As with mail trays above, the panel assumed that 2 trays of medium parcels could be located within reach of the carrier. So we subtract the first 2 trays to find the number of trays applied in the table below. For example, a route delivered a total of 95 parcels to the mailbox or parcel locker. We first multiply 95 by 0.7826 to find the total number of medium parcels to be 74.3. Dividing this by 10 and rounding up equals 8 trays of medium parcels. We subtract 2 and look up 6 trays in the table. The reloading time for medium parcels on this day 3.2936 minutes. These times are averaged over 52 weeks. Lookup table, daily standard time medium parcels. Number of trays. Standard. 1. 2. 4.7. S063, move large parcels from cargo area to rear door, is applied to the total number of parcels delivered to the door minus the first 6 which the panel determined would be reachable from the rear door. This standard is 0.1895 minutes, or 11.37 seconds per piece. So, if the route delivered 35 parcels to the door, this standard would be applied to 29 pieces at 11.37 seconds each. These times are averaged over 52 weeks. Office walk time. All walking time in the office is calculated at 0.00429 minutes per foot. Below are the instructions and the worksheet to be used by the carrier and manager to enter the proper office walking distances. Office and zip code. Route. Carrier withdraws mail, circle correct answer. Yes, no. Carrier signature. Supervisor signature. Date. Office walking distances, data collection form and instructions. The purpose of this form is to document standard operating procedures for capturing office walking distances used in the calculation of standard time on rural routes. Please note that the form does not cover all walking, since many walking segments are included in other standards. It is essential that the segments be measured carefully according to the detailed instructions on the back of this form. A separate form should be used for each rural route in the office. Instructions: read carefully before starting measurements. All measurements will be made jointly by the carrier and supervisor. Carrier will be paid for this activity according to procedures established by the USPS and NRLCA. The carrier or supervisor will record in the box at the top of the form the office and zip code, route, and date that the measurements were made, and whether or not the carrier withdraws mail. When measurements have been completed, both the carrier and the supervisor will sign the form. Don't start measuring a segment if you have not read the detailed instructions for it on the back of this form. Measurements will be made using a walking wheel. The wheel should be set to 0 at the origin of the segment before starting to measure the length of the segment. After completing the segment, record the distance immediately. Segments include the round-trip distance from origin to destination and back to the origin. Segment distances should be rounded up or down to the nearest foot. The walking path should be the most direct distance that is consistent with safe work practices and efficient business operations. If a walking segment does not apply, enter NA in the distance column. For withdrawal routes include segments 111, excluding number 4 and number 6 if they do not apply. For non-withdrawal routes include segments 1 and 511, excluding number 6 if it does not apply. Asterisk enter NA if a segment does not apply. Walking segments withdrawal routes include 111, excluding 4 and 6 if they do not apply. Non-withdrawal routes include segments 1 and 511, excluding 6 if it does not apply. Segment. Number. From. To. Round trip. Distance in feet asterisk. Instructions. 1. Carrier's case. Scanner storage area. From the point where the carrier stands when casing mail to the point where the carrier stands when retrieving the scanner. Segment. Number. From. To. Round trip. Distance in feet asterisk. Instructions. 2. Carrier's case. Raw letters or raw flats distribution case. From the point where the carrier stands when casing mail to the point where the carrier stands when retrieving raw letters or raw flats, whichever is further. Include walking distance to obtain a conveyance, if typically required. 3. Carrier's case. DPSL distribution rack. From the point where the carrier stands when casing mail to the point where the carrier normally stands when retrieving the first tray from the DPSL rack. Include walking distance to. Obtain a conveyance if typically required. Include item 4 only if carrier uses a personal vehicle or LHD government vehicle. 4. Carrier's case. FSS distribution rack. From the point where the carrier stands when casing mail to the point where the carrier normally stands when retrieving the first tray from the FSS rack. Include walking distance to. Obtain a conveyance if typically required. 5. Carrier's case. Parcel hamper. From the point where the carrier stands when casing mail to the location where the carrier normally stands when grasping the handle of the parcel hamper. For transport to their case. Include item 6 only if carrier uses a government vehicle. 6. Carrier's case. Assigned or typical location for inspection of vehicle. From the point where the carrier stands when casing mail to the point where the carrier stands when opening the driver's door of the parked vehicle. Use the assigned parking if there is one or the typical location if there is none. Segment. Number. From. To. Round trip. Distance in feet asterisk. Instructions. 7. Carrier's case. CFS/markup/ MMM/centralized holdback to the carrier's case. This is a round trip that starts where the carrier stands when casing mail and follows their normal path to the CFS, the markup case, the MMM location, centralized hold and back to the carrier's case. Note, the order of the locations may vary according to local practices. 8. Carrier's case. Accountables distribution point. From the point where the carrier stands when casing mail to the point where the carrier receives accountable mail from the clerk in the morning. 9. Carrier's case. Hot case. From the point where the carrier stands when casing mail to the point where the carrier stands when retrieving hot mail. 10. Carrier's case. Location of hamper or other conveyance for loading mail in vehicle. From the point where the carrier stands when casing mail to the average point where the conveyance for hauling mail to the vehicle is stored. 11. Carrier's case. Storage location for excess trays, tubs. From the point where the carrier stands when casing mail to the location where excess trays, tubs are stored after mail has been loaded for conveyance to the vehicle. 44. Service Performance Measurement, SPM, scans. The panel determined the time allowance for prompted 2-step and simple 1-step scans. These standards, S065 and S066, will be applied to SPM scans. For each SPM event, delivery or collection, the route will be credited with AS066. Perform prompted 2-step RRECS scans at 0.0928 minutes or 5.56 seconds. For each mail piece scanned, the route will be credited with S065. Perform simple on-step RRECS input scans at 0.0795 minutes or 4.77 seconds per piece. These times are averaged over 52 weeks.